This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by Mountain Glass Arts. For the month of April 2016, Mountain Glass is offering 25% off AccuGrind joints. Just put in the code AccuGrind, that's ACCUGRIND, at checkout. And for all you soft glass nerds, they're offering their COE 104 sale on mandrels and bead release. You can get it for 20% off. Just put in the code BEAD, that's BEAD, at checkout. For any further questions or comments, contact mountainglass.com, that's mountainglass.com. This episode is also brought to you by C-Cube Co. C-Cube now creates a wide range of specialty and one-of-a-kind artistic glassware, items such as hand-blown wine crafts, insulated coffee mugs, pint glasses, and custom piggy banks that you can have personalized with imprinting, logos, and color accents that are available. Just go to C-Cube Co, that's SEACUBECO.com for more information. That's ccubeco.com. This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. We will be dissecting their journeys in hopes to deliver actionable content that you, the artist, can start implementing now, helping you grow not only as a creative spirit, but also a successful artistic entrepreneur. With a little organization, relationship building, and your artistic ability, you can obtain greatness. Climb aboard, whether an artist, retail owner, or enthusiast. We have a ton of fun in store for you. Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show.
You're listening to the Wise Guy Radio Show.
Hey, what is happening? Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show, episode number 97. This is Jay Michael, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in today. With 17 years of experience behind the torch, I am as excited as always to bring you conversations with artists, sharing their stories in hopes to inspire and entertain while helping you grow your business. And today is no exception. Today's feature is with Will Menzies, also known as Boxfan Willie. He is a co-producer of the Flow magazine, also has a brand company, glass company called American Helix, and he is definitely an honor to have him on this show today. His story is long and beautiful, and he has been a help to all of us out there who have been in this industry for at least the last, I'd say, 15 years. Through the Flow magazine and tools that he's made and what have you. So it definitely was a pleasure and an honor to have him on, and hope you guys enjoy our talk. It's definitely a lot of fun. Coming up also, we'll be talking this week, since you guys are going to have a lot of bonuses this week as we reach towards episode 100. Going to be getting into more of our So You Want to Be a Glass Blower segment, along with another featured guest coming up, which I'm not going to tell you. And then our big episode 100 coming up, which I can't believe. So thank you, everybody who has supported the show. It's been along this journey. It's been almost a year since we've had the show out. June 3rd, I believe it was the actual launch date last year. And was pretty pumped that I was able to get these 100 episodes in before then. And if I would have kept on the 3 days a week, it would have been there sooner. But I'm glad I did cut back because it's allowed me to focus on other areas of my life that were getting a little slackadackle in and help with my brain and bandwidth and everything else. So thank you all for your patience and understanding and staying tuned to the show, and for also supporting our sponsors, Mountain Glass and Green Flash Glass, now as well as C-Cube Co. and also the Flow magazine. So definitely pumped to have them all on board. And other than that, I'm not going to ramble on too much because this is a fun interview. I want to get you guys on there. Still, again, as always, for right now, the Wise Guy Media site is up and running, but we are slowly moving forward, as I myself personally am the one that's doing all this stuff. If you go there to subscribe, definitely click on the subscription button, and hopefully it works. We've had it work on our end, so hopefully it works working on your end. Just go to wiseguymedia.com. When you go to the homepage, if you have not subscribed yet or been to the website to subscribe, you'll have a little pop-up come up, and just throw your email address in there, and then you'll get a respondent's email in your inbox to confirm your subscription. And then just go from there, and you will see what happens. And other than that, again, I'm going to bounce. Love you guys. Enjoy this episode 97 with Boxfan Willie, and we will see you on the next episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show. Love you guys. Take it easy. Peace. 3, 2, 1. Hey, what's up, Will? How you doing, brother?
Doing very well, sir. How are you?
I am fantastic, man. It is an honor and a privilege to have you on. You have been personally a major influence in my work and in my glass career, per se, through the past 17 years, or I guess really 15 years-ish when I first found you, and the flow and everything else. And it's exciting to have you guys on, and definitely going to be covering a lot of bases here besides your personal work and going over the flow and the adventures of your life you've had as a glass artist and all the fun stuff going on in our community now, and your involvement with Glass Roots and the trade shows, and really being a staple in a sense for all the new guys out there that are learning. And definitely, again, it's a privilege and honor to have you on, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Same here, man. I love what you've been doing with the podcast, and it's that same thing. It's spreading the knowledge, you know?
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, thank you. So before we get too sidetracked and out of whack here, if you want to give us a kind of a humble beginning story and where you came from, who got you started, and
Sure.
I guess from there, you know.
I was working a kind of quote unquote corporate job. I was doing fiber optic engineering. I was out in Ohio and Akron, which crazily enough is where Bob also got started at Sunshine back in the 70s. And I was at a Jerry Garcia birthday party, kind of a weekend gig, just kind of respecting Jerry Garcia on his birthday after he'd passed. And I came across a guy that was doing spoon demos on the Nortel, and he also had he was selling out of the rifle case, as we all started off doing mostly. And I wanted to learn. I had no idea this was what I would want to do for the rest of my life, but it definitely captured me. Moth to the flame kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he had no interest in teaching me, so he told me that there was a fella out in Oregon that taught classes by the name of Bob Snodgrass, and that I should find him. And so I kind of tracked, there wasn't a whole lot of internet back in those days, but somehow I think through Glasscraft, I was able to get Bob's digits and give him a call. And it was very informal, come on out. And so I lined up another fiber optic job up at Lake Bellevue in Washington, because I was going to let the company pay for me to move out there. And yeah, so got out there and went down and met Bob and Marie, and didn't work very long for the job before I just went ahead and quit and moved down to Eugene. And I rented a little stark, very Spartan metal building right across from Bob's house over in Glenwood, which is kind of in between Eugene and Springfield. And that's how it all got started.
Hell yeah. So when you first got going, what kind of setup did you get for yourself back then?
Oh, definitely the National 3, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, hell yeah.
What is it? I definitely wasn't trying to afford a $800 or $900 Carlisle. The party was not like that.
Yeah, back when they were actually $800.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I had the normal setup. I had a National 3. I had a crock pot. I had a bucket of vermiculite. A very small amount of hand tools. Luckily enough, Bob back then did have a supply business that he was doing. So, if I needed anything and if I had the loot for it, I could just walk across the street.
Heck yeah. And yeah, that's awesome. So to kind of back up real quick, now on the vermiculite side of things and the crock pot, I've done the same thing and did that for probably about the first year and a half-ish when I was doing my Renaissance tour and what have you. That's kind of our way of keeping our shit from cracking, some of this, besides having our kiln. So I guess from what I hear, the asbestos issues are what we deal with when you're dealing with vermiculite and the crock pot deal. Have you heard that yourself, like in heating it up or any of that kind of issue?
Sure, I heard about that, but it was years after I'd used the vermiculite.
Yeah,
so
same here.
Whatever damage had already been done.
Right.
So yeah, this is definitely not for me to promote anyone to use vermiculite, because there is asbestos in the mines. It just kind of comes naturally with the mining of vermiculite. And so when it's expanded through the process to make it into what we use as vermiculite, then it allows that asbestos to get airborne.
Yeah.
So yeah, not good shit. Definitely save your loot. Get a Paragon, get a Scud. Get something. Get on eBay and buy an old dental kiln or an old, something. You can find something, I promise.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay. I just want to cover that real quick while that was fresh because that was definitely a topic I've been wanting to bring up and I haven't talked about yet on the show. So that was fun to bring that up. So how long did you do that in Oregon for?
I originally did the Oregon thing for a little over 2 years. I ended up having an opportunity to move up to Seattle with, not necessarily with Cameron Tower, but Cameron Tower, who is, probably one of Bob's more well-known apprentices and definitely one of the more knowledgeable ones. He got a job. He was chasing the soft glass thing. He really wanted to do furnace work. And he had scored a job at a place called the Glass Eye up in Seattle. And so probably 3 months or so after he had moved up to Green Lake in Seattle, another one of the Snodgrass kind of family affiliates and his name was Bernard Taylor. We both moved up to Seattle and found a situation up there and set up a shop and just, wanted to be around Cameron, was hoping to get a job over there at the Glass Eye and kind of just, continue the march. It was time to, I'd been down there, I'd started lamp working, I'd gotten some basic skills down, and it was time to keep moving forward.
Heck yeah! So when you got up there and settled in, what were some of the first items and production size that you were creating for yourself?
Spoons. Made a little millie because not a whole lot of people made millies, and so at this time, and Bob was definitely big at the beginning of your apprenticeship on doing solid work. You weren't really encouraged to touch any tubing at all at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I definitely, not that my millies were the greatest or anything, but I could put them together. And so I made millie and made little pre-made millie marbles that I would sell to other glass blowers to put on their pieces. And, the basic spoons or the little Sherlock spoon, they were all simple little one piece. I've always been mainly a productionist. I enjoy the method of production. I enjoy figuring out the best way to make something. Headies give me heart attacks. That shit's crazy.
You and me both, dude. I'm in the same boat. I would rather have a kiln full of glass than one piece in there. I mean, I love the process of creation, but I'm the same way. Like my brain, I'm an engineer at heart, so my brain is all about how can I make this the best and the fastest and the most in one day.
That's it. Yep. I agree with that 100%. So yeah, I was making the basic stuff and, I was branching out a little bit, but the diet was already lean back then. A good day was if I could put a slice of cheese on my ramen.
You're right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I definitely had to be careful with what I was making. Plus, the hustle was hard in Seattle back then. There weren't a lot of shops. They were very spread out. Traveling around Seattle can be challenging. There's a lot of congestion, a lot of traffic. So you really had to be careful. Otherwise, you were not going to be able to pay rent, or you were not going to be able to, get your food on, let alone buy propane and oxygen so you could keep going.
So I know because the Northwest has always been like a mecca for glass blowing in this country. Was there already a good established amount of glass blowers up there? Because I know the pipers necessarily weren't, but still there was obviously a population of glass artists up there.
There was a population. I'm sure that it was denser than, most other spots on the West Coast, except for Eugene. Eugene definitely always was the most dense with glass blowers. But it wasn't a ton, and there was definitely if you were a hustler and you weren't afraid to dig out on the production, you could definitely make a living. And I was able to do so. But then you also, you go down to Fifth Avenue glass, which is where, Jason Lee and Marcel and Slinger back in the day, that group of guys were in Seattle at the time, and they were really pushing the envelope on the headies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were the first, and then Alex that had headies.com back in, the early 2000s, the HEADDIES headies. That was the first website that was really promoting these artists. And, to me, that's where the headier art really originated from and really took off from, was from, that core group.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember seeing down here in Florida with the guy I was working for. He knew those cats, and we were always kind of going back and forth talking on the phone with Abe Fleischman and what have you. And then all of a sudden, glasspipes.org popped up. And
right.
And then Scott Deppie came into the scene, and we were all like, "Who the fuck is this guy, Scott Deppie?" And he kind of took what the guys there were, Jason Lees and the Marcells and those guys were doing, and turn them upside down and flip them around a couple times and like showed them a new way of doing things. But it was neat to see that whole group of guys, their influence, how fast it spread across the country. But it was spreading because of like the glass lines and then the flow eventually, and then the glasspipes.org site. Like it was cool to see it, but like to figure out how the hell they were doing that stuff was a whole different animal. It was cool to look at, but then to actually figure that shit out was like, at the time almost impossible.
Well, there's a lot of that shit you're just not reverse engineering. Somebody has got to, take the towel off the table and show you the trick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of Scott actually did his apprenticeship with Marcel, Yeah. That was how he got started. And I remember Marcel telling me, that this guy would just sit down there and do reticello after reticello and just pop him in the water bucket. Like he went down there and he was not concerned. He had gotten himself squared away with his lifestyle to where when he came down there for this set period of time, he did not, nor did he want to make a single bit of money. So like, I'm going to misquote this. So, Scott, throw a rock at me later, but I want to say that the Grateful Dead Bear piece was done probably 9 months to a year after he started blowing glass.
Yeah, it makes sense, man, because I know some of the stuff that he was pumping out, like you're saying, like within the first 6 months to a year, was stuff that it just
ridiculous.
Like an alien came in and took over his body or some shit.
It was ridiculous. And then the jump between pieces was even more ridiculous.
Yeah,
like that's
exactly.
The thing I love to see about Scott, is that because he always followed something all the way through, and then once he got to a spot, he moved on to the next. I don't know if you've ever seen one of his dragon spoons, but he did these little dragon spoons. That was this beautifully carved dragon's head. And that was his foray into, that was him doing some more of the sculpting. And then once he got past the sculpting, then that was it. He had done it, he had perfected it, and he moved on.
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of the first cats out there, too, that I remember seeing, like, really getting the color palette down, like, doing, like, full rainbow pieces and stuff. Like, Jason Lee was really big into the color work as well, but, like, I think Scott was, like, took the full palette of what was available and made it work in a way that nobody had seen it done before, like some of the rainbow chains he was doing. But then, like you're saying, he would transition into something different, like the alien piece that he did, the UFO and the guy inside the UFO and all the pot leaves, and it was like just it's amazing to see. But then I look at your work, and your work has had this fun evolution over the years to where now I think so what is this? Almost 20 years now you've been doing this.
Pretty close.
Yeah, so it's seeing where you're at now. I can definitely tell your evolution from when I've been following your work to where you're at now. Like you're still doing things that you did then, but you've taken that same idea and now you're using your text that you have now, and it's like 1,000 times better. Like it's been perfected in a sense.
No, man, this shit ain't never going to be perfected.
No, but as close as possible.
Well, I have built my vocabulary, and I think everybody does as they continue to stay in the game. You build a vocabulary, you learn to speak a little more clearly, you learn to enunciate your techniques a little better. It evolves into a language.
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting a weird signal from you.
I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Still getting it?
It's a little weird, but it's okay. It's clear enough to where it's not going to mess with the recording.
No, I'm sitting absolutely still. I swear to God.
We had a really bad storm come through this morning, like tornadoes, and like literally we had like 3 tornadoes touch down right down the road from my house. So I'm wondering if it's like local shit going on here, or some of the power lines are down, or something going on.
That'll definitely get you awake in the morning. Have a couple of tornadoes land.
Yeah, man. One was like 2 blocks from my wife's school. She was right before she like an hour before she left. They touched down the street and was like, "Holy fuck!" It's crazy.
Yeah. I have a tornado story, but we'll save that one for another time.
All right, cool. So, how long did you stay up in the Northwest for before you decided to head to Texas?
3 years, and then I came back to Texas. I came back to Texas right around 2000. And, it was just, I definitely had not learned everything that I needed to learn up there, but, there were becoming more glass blowers. The competition was getting rather fierce. And, I knew there were head shops in Texas because I'd gone to them when I was, before I'd left out for the West Coast. And, and it was more appealing for me to go down there and break ground in Texas than to stay up in Oregon or Washington. And I knew that if I needed to go back up there and get a refresher course on some techniques or learn some new techniques, that's what they got planes for.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, moved back down to Texas, and pretty soon after that is when I met my lovely wife, Jennifer, and she was attracted to the torch as well. And she got on it, rather immediately after we had met. And yeah, soon after that came kids, and with her getting pregnant, then I started having panic attacks on, like, how's a pipe maker going to be able to pay for a family? And boy, you better figure this shit out. And
Yeah, I heard a lot of entrepreneurs refer to it as the baby syndrome. It's like you start,
that's
you know.
that's the baby syndrome. And it just so happened that, like, right around the same time as the baby syndrome, I wanted to do an article for Glassline. And so I called up Jim from Glassline and was talking to him. And, I won't get into the specifics of the conversation, but at the end of it, basically, I was told that I would not be able to do an article for him because I'm a pipe maker. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I, with absolutely no publishing experience, as a matter of fact, my wife and I did not even own a computer at the time. We decided that we were going to do a magazine, and it was going to fully accept pipe makers and promote pipe making art. And it was also going to be in color, which, if you remember back in those days, Glassline was not even in color. And we're like, really, man, how in the hell are you going to have a glass blowing magazine in black and white?
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of funny you say that, man, because it's like, I guess you guys evolved as our color palette evolved. Because when Glassline was around, there was like 5 colors available.
Oh yeah, and that's not, that's 5 colors. It doesn't mean they're all stable.
Yeah, exactly. That's not including jade.
Oh,
our favorite.
Yeah, jade. What's it compatible with?
Yeah, nothing.
Jade.
The concrete.
Jade. No jade, just jade. Make a solid jade piece. Don't even put any clear on it.
Yeah, and for all those listening that don't know what we're talking about, back in the day, but before I started, even, we had a small palette, and jade green was like the green that was available, and it was the worst. I don't even know what the COE was, if it even had a COE, but I mean, you can literally do a wrap and rake, and the green would remove itself from the surface of the clear that you had wrapped it on. Like 2 days later, you could rub your fingers down it and feel like a perfect round spiral crack, where that green was removing itself from the color or from the clear palette. Like, it was just crazy.
It was nuts. I made a little nug jar, and I put a jade green lip wrap on it. And I remember pulling it out of the kiln, full annealing cycle. This was after my vermiculite days. And literally, like, within 5 minutes of me pulling it out of the kiln, the lip wrap popped and went at least a foot, maybe even a foot and a half up in the air. Like a jumping jack or something.
Holy shit, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah,
that's funny.
That was my last jade piece.
Yeah, I haven't used it since myself, and I know the grains have gotten better over the years, but it's still it's always left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, for sure. But as we kept pushing forward, and we had color companies, the pipe scene actually helped pay for the palette. And so for all the artistic purists out there, don't knock the pipes. We would not have the materials and tools that we have today if it wasn't for the pipe.
Yeah, I agree. I think the color companies are actually now saying the same thing, which is awesome.
Right. Yeah, it's just, it's just truth. And Henry Grimmett came along, and Henry was real big on educating and talk about flame characteristics, and he was really big into research. And I just remember working with Henry having so much to do with me having an ability to learn how to work with the colors properly.
Yeah, it's so important. Because like myself personally, that was something that I learned as well. But then as the palette began to grow and grow and grow, I didn't focus on it as much, and I just kind of, I guess, I got a lot away with a lot of things, because I just didn't know any better. But nowadays, with all the other new colors coming out, I'm really paying attention to like kiln cycles and not running it through too many cycles, and how to use it properly in flame settings, and you have to.
Sure, and knowing the different characteristics of the different metals or rare earth elements that actually go into making the color, like, so when you are dealing with a sparkle color or you're dealing with a green, realizing that there is chrome in there and that chrome and carbon really don't get along. So that's why you don't want to use a reducing flame when you're working those type of colors, is because that will attach itself to the chrome and actually shift the coefficient of the color. Those are the kind of things that as you're sitting there working, oh shit, man, I really need to tighten this flame up.
So when you guys started doing the flow, were you still getting your production line for yourself going? So you guys were kind of like balancing out the magazine and also your glass at the same time, or were you trying to really focus on the mag itself?
Oh, hell no, man. That production line paid for the flow.
Cool.
Like literally our first let me say that. Our first issue was paid for entirely with pipe trade. We had a friend that owned 4 or 5 shops in Fort Worth area. And his other business was that he was a junk mailer. So he actually had relationships with print shops and things like that. And he would print junk mail for the Dallas Fort Worth area. And Kelly, I'm giving that shout out to you, baby. You got it started. So this good friend of our, Kelly Rees, we told him this lame brain idea that we had of starting this glass blowing magazine. He's like, well, man, I can help. So, Jennifer got the computer program and she started teaching herself how to use, we didn't use Photoshop at the time. I believe it was Quark. And so, she got the first issue laid out, and we went to Kelly. He squared away with the printers, and, the printers helped us out on getting it print ready. And I literally carried $7,500 worth of pipes down to Kelly, and that paid for the first issue.
Oh, hell yeah. That's killer.
Yeah. I mean, pipes paid for the flow for the first 5 years. Magazine business is not, if you don't love what you're doing your magazine about, you might as well quit, because it's not a very profitable business. As a matter of fact, 97% of all startup magazines go out of business within the first 18 months.
Yep. Yeah, I'm very familiar with that myself. I started a magazine here locally in town with another friend of mine with our gallery that we had that was connected, and we ended up not launching it because we got the ad spots taken care of, but they were so worried about being on and if it was going to work out. So we got like the first month paid for, which paid for a flyer to promote the magazine, and then they were like, yeah, we're not sure about this anymore, and so everybody backed out at the last minute, and then shit hit the fan, and we said fuck it and closed shop, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it's a tough gig, and we got that first issue printed, and we actually drove out to the infamous Albuquerque Flame Off that was put on by Lewis Wilson, and that's where we actually introduced the first issue. And we can talk about that event if you haven't talked about it on your show before.
No, let's go for it.
Oh well, holy shit! Lewis Wilson, which he is of Crystal Myth fame. He is like, and I say this with the most respect, he is like the Forrest Gump of glass blowing, and not he's an incredibly intelligent guy, but he's always been in the right place at the right time. It just works out for Lewis. Like, he's got presidents that have, his items, and, he's done all of these fascinating, crazy things. And, he's one of the old school guys. He's definitely, he's been blowing glass, or lamp working, I should say, since I want to say the 60s. And so he put together a flame off. He kind of saw what was going on in the pipe movement, and he wanted to put together a flame off, which happened in Albuquerque in 2001. So this was truly the first event that gathered, what were soon to be some of the great glass blowers in the pipe world. So, for instance, Deline Peralta was there, Luca from Illadelph, Marcel Braun was there. And then, of course, you also had your cadre of the old school badass guys. You had Roger Paramore, you had Mylan Townsend, Robert Mickelson, Lewis himself. So it was just this incredible gathering of talent. Darby Home was there, his brother Karsten Carlisle, Eli Aller, man. I mean, the list is just truly Andrew Brown, Carver B.
Hell yeah.
And so it was a true competitive flame off. And I'm not going to say which one of the older guys got up there and said it, but there was definitely like, cause I think the first prize was, maybe a GTT Delta, I believe. And I remember one of the old school guys getting up there and he's like, well, let me tell y'all what I'm going to do with my prize. This was before he even started the flame off. And, you know, uh, Delene Peralta handed their ass to all of them, and she won that thing, and she took that home. So not only did a piper win it, but a female piper won the pretty much what was the first legitimate flame off.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, I remember that whole deal and her winning that. It's killer. She's awesome too, man. I've been talking with her for years over the social media feeds and stuff, and her work's incredible. She's
Super
definitely
talented.
yeah. She's been an inspiration for the women in our industry, but also for the men and just people just in general. Just with her work, it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And she started with that strong background. Clinton Roman and Marcel back in the day over in uh, I don't remember if they were in Eugene or if they were up north in Corvallis, but anyway, in that area, starting off with those guys that really turned out to be some of the leaders in our entire movement. So yeah, that was the deal. The Albuquerque flame off really lit a fire for a lot of flame workers in the pipe area, and for us to see that that we were actually kicking some ass and doing some things, I think continued. It gave people motivation to continue pushing forward.
Yeah, I agree. So how'd the launch go for you guys for the flow?
Pardon? Oh, it went great. I mean, it was definitely not the best issue. It was 28 pages. The layout wasn't the best, the pictures weren't the best, but it was something, and it was in color. And to be honest, and I don't know, we'd have to ask Christian Turley, who at the time was in charge of the melting pot, and I don't remember what it was called back then. It wasn't called the melting pot.
No, it was like the GDLGA or it's like the Glass Lamp Workers Association
Yeah,
directory something.
Yeah. So Christian Turley at the time was in charge of that, and I remember that the flow came up as a topic of conversation. This first issue, and so many people were like, "Oh, this thing! It was such a little bitty. Oh, the pictures were fucking terrible, and all of this bad press." But it was the longest thread ever on the GLDG. It was like 256 pages long,
Oh my
and
God.
yeah, man, and we got more subscriptions than I could shake a stick at,
Yeah.
and that helped us, so all that bad press helped us push through to the second issue, which I wanted. The first issue had Mike Plain on the cover because, it was when the first GTT Python had ever been put out. And so you got Mike Plain, who doesn't blow glass anymore, but he was an incredibly talented guy while he was, in our industry. He started off, he didn't start off, but he ended up working for Jerome Baker, moving out to Eugene, and doing lathe work. And he did the most fantastic Grawl vessels that, anybody's ever seen. And so the picture on the front of the first flow is him doing a 2-foot flare on the torch. And so I realized that maybe today, with the bigger torches and all this different technology, that, that's not such a weird thing to see somebody do. But I'm here to tell you, in 2001, that was the shit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this guy's dressed up like a spaceman in this aluminum suit with the big face mask on, and he's literally spinning out a 2-foot flare on a torch.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. I remember that Python they had pictures out on it. I was like, is that even necessary? And then they made a second one, and I was like, oh, and then it was like all, painted like a Python. It was gorgeous. And then I remember seeing that cover, and I was like, it blew my fucking mind just to think that these guys are wearing these volcano suits to blow glass in. It's like, what the fuck?
Oh, that's exactly what it was. I remember we went up to the I want to say it was the 2002 gas conference up in Seattle. So, and this was way back in the day. So, Lucan, Craig Lewis, Jennifer, and myself loaded up in Craig Lewis's Tacoma and literally drove all the way to Seattle for this flame off. I mean, for the gas conference. And Mike Plain was there demoing the Python, and the auditorium that he was in had 30-foot ceilings, and the Python was so big that the acoustic tiles were falling from the ceiling.
Wow.
So it drew a lot of attention to us as a group. For people who are older in the industry, y'all know that lampworking at the beginning was not really viewed as an art form, but more of a craft form by the people in the Glass Art Society. And it took a lot of years, and it took a lot of push from the lampworking community for us to be accepted by that group as an entity among the glass art world.
Yeah, it's that whole controversy of craft versus fine art.
Oh yeah, and that's endless. That one, that's one that's the chicken or the egg.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that debate's going to continue on until we all quit blowing glass.
Yep, which will never.
Never. Yeah. So that was the Albuquerque thing. That was the first issue of the Flow, and which was literally 100% paid for with pipes. And then came Operation Pipe Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And we had just finished the layout of the second issue. All of the shops that we dealt with had been, they weren't necessarily closed down. Now, my friend Kelly, he was actually in the bust. So like he was one of the guys along with, Tommy Chong, Ryan Turf, Jason Harris, and then our buddy Kelly Reese down and, was part of that whole sting, that federal sting. And so, basically the guy that was helping me make sure that the magazine got printed was gone as far as, the head shop world was concerned. And in between that time, I'd started making tools for Bob. Bob needed somebody to make, reamers and graphite paddles and stuff. And, me being the loyal apprentice, I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. I can work with shit. And I'd been not perfecting, but I'd been improving my tool line, and I had a whole shitload of tools. And Susan Webb from Glass Alchemy, she knew the dilemma that we were in. She wanted to see the issue printed. So she literally bought like $6,000 worth of glass blowing tools from me because it was, and at the time it was what I had to offer in trade. It was like, this is what I got. She didn't need a whole bunch of pipes. She didn't need spoons or oneies. So, I had the glass blowing tools, and, they had people coming in and buying color from them at their shop up in Portland. And so it was something that she could convert. And so the second issue of the magazine was paid for by Menzies Tools.
Man, that's amazing. Yeah, man, 'cause I remember like years ago when I was looking for Elmarvers, and everybody was like, "Oh, get a hold of Boxfan. He's got the Elmarvers." So,
Yep.
And we ended up buying them through you.
Yeah, and it was really neat on that because Darby at the time was making an Elmarver, and the way that we all communicated back then as pipers, it was very collaborative, and we were all in communication. So I remember, we would talk about, hey, do you mind? And what do you think about doing this? And maybe this will help. And same thing with Scott Griffin, who now has Griffin Glass Tools, who actually continued making my tools because I got too busy to keep making them. And I think that's one of the biggest things that has propelled us forward as a group, as pipe makers, is that we shared, we didn't feel the threat of competition as much, or maybe we just didn't view it as competition.
Yeah, I think it depended. Like for me personally, I looked at. I agree with what you're saying because I think in the art world, I'm getting some weird feedback on you. Signal's weird.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fading out a little bit.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. It was just the signal got weak. I always hear my echo go back and forth.
Echo.
Having some flashbacks here. So, but man, I find like in Florida for like up until maybe like 7-8 years ago, it was still really like nobody wanted to share anything. Like there was a core group of us together that worked together and we shared information and got together and collabed and whatever. But Florida in general, it was like a very secretive state still. But like I found like the Midwest, like in Texas area and also the Northwest, everybody was all about sharing all this information. Like myself personally, I haven't really ever gotten out to the gases and the trade shows and stuff because I always felt like I was just stuck in Florida. I mean, I guess I could have gotten on a plane and flown out and went and done it, but like the exposure here in this state was really minimal compared to everybody else out there having access to it and, getting in contact with people and, touching base. Like I had the forums and stuff, but even then it was really hard for myself to get out and go to these shows and talk to people and learn. I had to hear it from other people or through the Flow. I'd see an article in there about something and then I would get excited about it and then go on glasspipes.org or the forums and whatever and try to research. So it's cool to hear you guys had this core group of people that were all about innovation and helping each other grow.
Do you think that the repressive laws affecting head shops and the marijuana community in Florida kind of helped urge that closed, like the non-sharing attitude in Florida?
Yeah, I think so completely. Yeah, I think we were probably one of the major like underground states,
Right.
in a sense.
Yeah, because in Eugene, I mean, and there were some people out in Eugene that were more guarded, but for the most part, Bob himself really promoted a sharing and educational kind of scene. And it wasn't, it wasn't that whole glass curtain that you hear about,
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of that, people, and of course, not everybody, I'm speaking in general terms here, but, it was a very sharing scene. And then, when we got down to Texas, man, Texas is so big and Texas has got so many shops and there were so few of us that we were just really fucking excited just to hang out with another glassblower.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and it helps, man. It helps to have influence from each other. Like I was in my cave for probably the first 10 years of doing my glass, and then once I got out and shared space in a studio space, we all in the space grew together. Like it was amazing. Like overnight, some new blood would come in town, and all of a sudden we're all learning all these new techniques that we never even knew existed, kind of thing. So it's definitely important.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I really think that's what's helped kind of push everything along because, I mean, it really, it has not been that long. You figure you look back in maybe 90, 96, 97, you started to see headies coming from like Brian and Yvonne Padilla from the Snodgrass camp. And then I'd like to say probably around 98 is when that Corvallis crew, which was like Ezra and Eli and Marcel, all of those guys. If you look at the pieces that were produced in like 98, and then you fast forward to 2016, which is only 18 years later, man, what a change.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, and it seems like with the help of the internet and social media and then the millennials coming in that are all about communicating with each other and sharing stuff and being as eco-friendly as possible in a sense too. And I'm not saying all of them, but the generation that's kind of like the stigma that they have. It's interesting now. Everybody's just sharing everything.
It's kind of hard to be eco-friendly as a glassblower. I think one of the funniest damn things that I ever heard any glassblower say was we were up at AGI, and there's a scientific glassblower by the name of Barry Lafler. And I don't remember what brought on the conversation, but somebody asked Barry, so, kind of, what do you think your carbon footprint is? And without even hesitating, looked at him, he said, Rhode Island.
Yeah, man, it's so true. I'm posting up, I had Adrienne Ladd, she goes by Glass Happy. She came back on as a follow-up. She had some serious health issues, and that were a lot of it was related to glass blowing that weren't from glass blowing, but were associated with it. And she came back on, and we just had a whole conversation about the cadmiums, but about this topic, about the fact that, our community, I mean, really, we're all a bunch of deadhead hippies that love the earth and want to make a difference. But then we leave this gigantic fucking carbon footprint because we have nowhere to recycle our shit. We're putting all these emissions out into the environment that comes out of our studios.
Yep.
It's like, it's such a irony.
Cadmiums, and we're taking precious metals from the earth to pigment our color palette. It is definitely not. And so anybody who wants to fool themselves, get the fuck over it. It is not an eco-friendly art form. It's just not.
Yep. And I think, though, that as our industry grows, potentially there could be some third-party entities out there that become an entity based on our need for a place to go get rid of our shit or recycle our glass or whatever,
Dave Winship's one, Dave Winship's a prime example. It's been one of his, biggest projects has been to try to institute a recycling program for borosilicate glass up in Eugene. And then to hopefully take that and spread it around nationally. And, he's a super smart guy with a ton of resources in his fingertips. and it's still a challenge for him.
Yeah, I was talking. I don't remember who it was. I was talking to some. Maybe it was Joe Scar. I was talking to, but he was saying how there's some farmers now that are using recycled borosilicate in their medium, and the materials they're using for aerating the soils.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. So,
Well, I mean, that's a better use than what we've got open to us now, is where it's just used for road conglomerate, you know?
yeah. Yeah, man, I hate throwing that shit away, especially because I know it costs me money. You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And if you don't throw it away, oh, by the way, for anybody out there, if you have pets and you need to place store your glass, save those pet bags.
Yep, exactly.
They're super resilient. The glass won't break through them. It'll give you a great place to like store your glass trash in a reasonable size. Because I don't know how many of us out there have gotten one of those aluminum trash cans, and you just keep filling it up and you filling it up, and when it gets up to the top, then you're like, oh shit, I cannot move this thing.
Yep. Yeah, then the bottom half's full of water from our dump out buckets.
Yeah, or you take the 22 and you shoot a few holes in the bottom of it
Yeah.
before you start.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, the food bags and also like cat litter boxes that you can get, the plastic tubs and stuff that the cat litter comes in, and work great too.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and see, this is part of, this is part of the sharing process, everybody sharing these little things to keep each other sharp and maybe make us a little bit more responsible to the environment and, just be better folks and be better at it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man, because there's got to be, it's going to have to happen eventually. I mean, just the way that this industry is growing, the amount of waste that we're putting out there, something's got to happen to where this sucks, we can't have knockoff buckets that are separated for each color or for, it'd be a pain in the ass. It would not be efficient for us at all, but there's got to be a way eventually where we can separate our trash and have it recycled like normal garbage.
Sure.
And
I'm sure that we'll get there,
Yeah. Yeah, all in time. So I guess I kind of move forward. So now the flow's oh man, weird feedback. The flow's going good. So how many years now? You guys have been almost 15 years? Something like that?
15.
Yeah.
15 years, yeah. 15 years going strong, and I think we're in like 17 foreign countries, and there's a lot of interest in lamp work all around the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. So at what point in time did Maureen come on board?
Around 2007.
Okay.
Yeah, Jennifer and I, our first love is actually blowing the glass, and I think that the reason that we did the flow was just because there was a hole there was a hole or a need that needed to be filled, because we were a force as pipe makers, and it needed, in our minds, it needed representation. And it's not that we did not want to print magazines the rest of our lives. We want to blow glass the rest of our lives. So there just came a point, and we were always late. Come on, man. I mean, we smoked. We had kids, we had things going on. So not that we were terribly late, but we didn't put out 4 issues a year. We put out 3.5.
Right. Yeah.
And if you go back and you look at those first 5 years of the flow, like you can literally see to where, okay, we only squeezed in 3 issues in 2001 or 2002. And, so we definitely needed to bring a level of professionalism to the publishing that we weren't being able to do. So, we met up with Maureen, who already was publishing 2 other glass-related art magazines, which is Glass Art and Glass Patterns Quarterly, and she'd been publishing for like 20 some odd years. And it seemed like a good fit. She's from Kentucky, and so Jennifer and I drove up to Kentucky to meet with her and her husband Steve, and it was like a match made in heaven. We're sitting there, and Jennifer and Maureen are, and I was kind of trying to be in the discussion, but they were talking about all the layout issues and things of this nature. And all of a sudden, Steve's husband walks in, and he's got a 12-pack of Heineken in a joint, and he looks at me and he says, "You want to go fishing?" And I was like, "Holy shit, this is a match made in heaven."
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, fucking A.
Yeah, it was literally like, a picture of Jennifer and I 20 years down the road.
Right.
So it was a great fit. And Maureen is an incredible partner, and she's very responsible, and she's very much in love with the glass, and she's in love with the people who produce the glass. And it was just a good fit.
Yeah, it's awesome. So how many publications come out a year now for the flow?
4. That's it. Quarterly.
Yep.
You know, we could do more, but that's just it seems to be a good rhythm. The other 2 magazines that Maureen publishes come out quarterly as well. So, it allows her to have a nice rhythm of putting out 1 magazine a month.
Heck yeah.
You
Yeah,
know.
it's kind of funny 'cause, like, with this podcast, like, I was like, just because I like to keep my word and keep a good thing going with the show, I wanted 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and it was going well for a while. But then it's like it's overwhelming at times. I was like, holy fuck, there's just so much going on. I can't not do 3 days a week. And I have a coach of mine who's my podcast coach, and he kept telling me, he's like, cut your show to back to 1 day a week. And I'm like, no, man, I want to do 5 days a week. And
shit.
that's where it got to a point because I have some ideas of where I'm going to take the show, just to kind of some variations of it. But but cutting it back to 2 days has been huge. But some weeks I only do 1 episode. And I'm
Right.
not, I can't promise I'm going to do it every freaking week, but there's a lot of time that goes involved in it. But I do want to make sure that when I do put an episode out, it's quality, and I'm sure you guys are the same way with the magazine. You didn't want to just pump out a magazine with a bunch of bullshit in it.
No. Jennifer is quite the perfectionist when it comes to that. And if you look at the flows, especially from 2001 up to 2006 or 7, you could see how she continued to evolve as a layout artist. And all that was self-taught. She never took there weren't really online courses back then, and we weren't in an area that had a community college or any type of a learning resource for doing that. So it was all self-taught.
Nice. So speaking of her, and one of the reasons I initially got a hold of you guys when I first launched this show was to talk about, besides the flow and being a fan of both y'all's work, was the fact that you guys are a couple and you also are both glass artists. And I thought it was a cool dynamic and interesting as well that, as a couple that share a passion for the same medium and being glass artists, we don't always all get along, So how does that work for you guys as a married couple that live together and have kids, and, how's that work out for you guys? You guys share the same studio space? You have like your own times in the studio? Like, how's that work for you?
Well, we're both still alive.
Right.
Yeah. Man, it's challenging. I mean, we didn't just do the flow together. We don't just blow glass together. We also have a production business, which, right now has 17 employees. And, we do that together as well. And, it's challenging, but at the same time, I would never have another partner besides her. I've had a couple of other partnerships before, and whenever I'm going into business deals, anybody starts talking about partnership, I can just honestly look at them and say my wife is the last partner I'll ever have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I've always preached it, and I hear it all the time in the business world and Dave Ramsey says it. I listen to him a lot. He says the only ship that won't sail is a partnership.
That's it. That is the only ship that won't sail as a partnership,
Yeah.
and I've tried it, and it doesn't, it doesn't paint either one of the parties in a bad light. It's just, it's a hard dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a core something, like with a married couple, with Jennifer and I, we've got, kids. So we have this common thing that is greater than us that we always fall back to. When you're talking about just a peripheral relationship with a business partner, you don't have that thing binding you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you have to deal with their issues that they may potentially have as well, which then affect the business. It's amazing.
Or shit, they got to deal with mine.
Yeah,
I mean, holy shit.
No, totally.
Well, I can say for me, for sure, I many times fall short of the glory,
Mm-hmm.
and it's yeah. So being, I would not have gotten done, and I'm not trying to claim it like I got it done. I'm just saying, like, what we have together accomplished could not have been accomplished by a single person.
Yeah.
Or or it couldn't have been accomplished by either one of us by ourselves.
Right.
It took that synergistic unit in order to get those things accomplished, and a whole lot of help from a lot of other people besides just she and I.
Yeah, and the fact of, like you're saying, like with the production company and having a crew now, you have to have like the right crew.
And that's a whole other journey.
Yeah.
That's a whole other journey, especially when you're dealing with a specific craft.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. So I kind of want to get into that talk about that. With your helix piece that you're doing, and with the production line, because I know a lot of people that there's kind of two variations of the glass artist. There's the glass artist that wants to just be the artist, and then there's the glass artist that wants to be the businessman, entrepreneur, have a big company, maybe, or have a production line of some sort of something.
Well, there's the third one too.
Yeah.
There's the crazy guy like me that thinks he can have both.
Yeah. No, I agree, because that's me. And it's a lot of fucking work.
It is, but as much as I like the process and working the processes out, there also has to be creation time in there,
Mm-hmm.
and so I need to have a little bit of time just to do what I kind of call my Boxfan stuff, to do my starship pendants or to do my sculpting, and I don't do a lot of it anymore, but I do enough to try to keep me moving forward and try to just keep the tools sharp anyway.
Yeah, you have to. No, I totally agree, man. Because that's why I'm blessed with my Disney gig, because that's my place to go. I mean, even though I'm doing production there, it still gives me a chance to have that creative outlet to really focus and do my art. Because it's as an artist, you got to have that outlet. And and I don't know if you're the same way, but I know myself. Like before I really got into glass, I did all kind of art, was painting and drawing and clay and music and whatever. And I find that the glass, it takes so much of that source that I really don't have much left over for any other type of creative outlet, unless I'm like out in the garden or cooking, for instance, which I enjoy doing. But it's
I guess it probably depends on how much you want to put in or get out of the glass, because glass, I think, is a medium that, well, or at least I don't think that I will ever perfect it myself. I will never get to the point to where I feel like I have learned it all. There's always something new.
Yeah, man, especially, I mean, even just doing like the same fucking pipe. You can make the same piece 5 times in a row and make it different every single time. It comes out looking the same, but the process to make that sumbitch is not the same every single time.
That's it. That's it. There's many different roads to get to the same place.
Yeah, and glass takes you down them all.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so funny. It's always cheats, man. It's like once you try to control the medium, it will burn and cut you and let you know that it is in control.
Control you.
Yeah.
Talk shit and see what those glass gods have to say about that.
Yep.
Have that. You don't even have to say that shit out loud. All you have to do is think it. And you'd be like, "Oh, I got this shit," and then all of a sudden, crack.
Yep. Yeah, man. That's why when I'm in studios and I have friends of mine that are working and they're like at the very end of the process, I will not look at them or even get anywhere near them, because I feel like in physics, you can look at an experiment and change the outcome. So I feel the same way with their pieces. Like I don't want to even look at them, dude.
Schrodinger's cat, man.
Right.
That's it. Quantum, right there.
Yep.
You just think about it, and all of a sudden that transfers into a physical thing, and it's like, holy shit, that just went south real quick.
Yeah, and it goes quick.
Yeah.
It is such an emotional letdown, too.
It's part of the process, man. I had a piece that I was been working on for a couple of weeks off and on that just went down the fucking toilet this morning, and but there's things to learn from that,
Yeah, and those that can't learn from it should not be doing it.
Well, I remember, Mickelson said, if you're not breaking something, then you're not pushing yourself hard enough.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. I heard a quote yesterday, actually, on that same kind of line, was something about the fact that if your idea that you have, if you can find a solution in your lifetime, then the idea is not big enough.
Holy shit, that's pretty auspicious.
Right? I was like, damn, that's pretty deep. But it's
true.
That's pretty, because like you're saying, like this glass stuff, I mean, I've seen videos of guys like Lino Tagliapietro has been blowing glass for 100,000 fucking years since he was like came out of the womb with a punny in his hand, and he still is like, I am nowhere. I'm a master in certain things, but I am not a master of glass. It may take me 4 lifetimes to even get anywhere near it.
Sure, or Dante or Davide Salvatore or Lucio Bubacco or Cesare or Cesare's son. The dude's not even 30 yet, and he's just crushing.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's great, and I think you were right when you said that if you're going to really dedicate yourself to glass, it's hard because it does encompass you so much, and it really takes a whole lot of concentration from you. But it's also so much fun. I just really don't want to do anything else.
Yeah, I know. And that's my struggle right now, because I love doing this podcast, like at the whole process of it, talking and, I mean, shit, I was looking forward all day and all week to this conversation. But then I like think about my glass. I'm like, man, I'm so glad I got that shit going on at Disney because it forces me to go down the torch,
Yeah.
to get that fix.
Well, and at Disney, like you really get to push yourself. I've seen some of the things that you've been doing over there, and I got to hang out with David Sandage when he was working over at Disney, and the shit that y'all do over there is not lightweight lamp work. I mean, y'all get after it.
Yeah, man. Some of it's like when I first got on the job and I was seeing some of our larger figures. You got 4 pounds of clear and a Mickey or like the Genie or something like that, and it's a full detailed clear. It's amazing the details in these pieces, but like I said, it's fucking 4 pounds of clear.
Yeah, and you don't just heal a fucking crack and clear. Okay,
no, yeah,
that's that's when it's time to start putting some powder on that piece.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we don't do that. We do it on some stuff, but not much. It's pretty neat, man. So I want to back up a little bit to your, I guess, the origins in a sense, and get where the hell did the Boxfan name come from? Like, I know what a Boxfan is, but is that the origins of it? Was that like your ventilation or something at first?
Yeah, that was my smart ass brother commentating on my first couple of ventilation systems. Yeah, was Boxfan. But hey, man, it worked rather well, man. I've had my blood work done, and I've got 0 cadmium levels, so it must not have been too bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you say that, bro, because like when I first heard about you and your name, it honestly made me wonder. I was like, I wonder if I could use a Boxfan, not knowing your background or anything, as a ventilation. And I did that myself, as well. But it was outside. It wasn't really inside anywhere. And then I started seeing these kids on Instagram and the videos and stuff and, getting setups in their bedroom with a Boxfan. And I'm like, all right, we got to reach out to these dudes and change the ways that they're doing things because there's cheaper and easy, more efficient ways of doing this.
There are, and that's one of the places to where there's truly not a whole bunch of knowledge is in exhaust evacuation systems and makeup air. And we were able to put a couple of like a 2-part article. I worked with Mike Aurelius over at Orleans, and we kind of co-opted and did an article on ventilation because I am glad to say that I no longer use box fans.
Yep.
I have improved the ventilation systems just a little bit. But it does seem, and it's, and it's complicated, like when you look at, CFM and static pressure and velocity of air, because you're not just moving air, like how directive is your movement of the air, because you need that to have a certain velocity in order to carry the stuff up and out of your system.
Yep.
So yeah, it could be it can be very difficult and challenging, but at the same time, it's a cool thing to tweak over the years.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's one of those kind of things that, again, like a third party is going to come in and specifically create ventilation for us. And I know there's a couple of systems out there now for it, but I think that there'll be something come out that'll be designed for the home studio lamp worker.
Well, I don't know if they're still doing it, but Rich Hoyt, Homer's son, that from Glasscraft, had started fabricating some units, and I remember that through Glasscraft Winship that they were selling these prefabbed ventilation hoods.
Huh. Check that out.
I can't say whether they're still selling them or not, but 4, 5, 6 years ago they were still selling them.
Yeah, I know Mountain Glass I saw on their site, they had a home studio ventilation setup, probably the same kind of thing. It may have even been from them.
Mountain does good things, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, glad to have them on the show. Keep me going.
Yep.
That's for damn sure.
Absolutely.
And speaking of that, man, I guess we could announce now, which we'll have your spot on before your show starts, but that the Flow is now officially a new sponsor for the podcast, and I can't thank you guys enough for coming on and supporting this and helping, move the knowledge even more forward, and we'll be doing some cross-promoting and what have you. I'm really excited about that.
Well, you're doing the podcast that I wanted to do, but I don't have the organization or the time to do it. I mean, what you're doing is thorough and it's educational, and and it's in the new medium that's really making its way around the world. I listen to a shitload of podcasts, and I get a lot of good information from them. Not yours is the only glassblowing podcast that I'll listen to, but it's a great media form to gain information.
Yeah, I agree.
And you're killing it. You're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks, man. I think the fun part about the podcast myself is to have almost like the one-on-one intimacy with someone in your ears while you're in your studio by yourself. Like you have someone there with you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And to be able to talk about the glass and, something we're familiar with makes it even better. I think for me, I love it. I love the fact that I have the opportunity to do this. And in a sense, to be a voice, I mean, literally in a sense, to be a voice for this industry.
Well, it's important, education is how we got to where we are now. And I know that's being a repetitive topic in this conversation, but it's just because it's very true, as we have seen the availability of knowledge grow for the lampworking community, we've also seen the lampworking community grow.
Yep. Yeah, grown by leaps and bounds, all thanks to Slinger.
Wait.
I got to bring him on the show too, man. I've been wanting to get a hold of him. I know he's so busy, but I want to rib him about it because it's like I really wonder in the back of his soul if he regrets at points in times of putting that out, because of how crazy things have gotten, and crazy in a good way, but crazy in a bad way too at the same time. It's really interesting.
It's brought a lot of dynamics, but like as far as him regretting doing it, I can't. I'm not going to speak for, but like I just can't see how, because we all witnessed him putting that thing together, dragging cameras all around the country, and literally videotaping every event, and it was 100% a labor of love.
Absolutely, yeah. I have all the respect in the world for that, because just doing this alone and being at my house doing this, and like I'm getting ready to go on the road and start doing stuff like that as well. But man, it was so well done on the top of it all.
Super well done. Oh man, I mean, like that very first image of where they're pressing up on that elevator.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that imagery was amazing. And that was an actual elevator in their old shop. I want to, now they don't think they named that one Mount Crushmore. I can't remember what they named that shop, but anyway, it was an old trolley repair station. So like literally as you entered into it, there were these long tracks that went into the studio where they would park the trolleys to do the repairs on them.
Oh, fascinating.
So it was a fucking old elevator, man, like, 1900s old, with big exposed gears and belts and pulleys, and yeah, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole opening scene was fantastic. It was like very cinematic and well shot.
And then for Hugh, Bob's first apprentice, like how Bob ended up in Eugene. I don't know if you remember that part.
Yeah.
He was like, they got better weed in Eugene.
Yeah.
Well, shit. Let's go to Eugene.
Yeah. The whole idea of following the spring, I think is an awesome concept that a lot of the people in our industry, those that are single and can do it, they have the ability to get out and not have tie down anything. They can do that. They can follow the weather around the country, or around the world, for that matter. But I think that's part of the beauty of our art. Is to be able to get up and pack and just go travel and go move around and go see people and share our experiences and ideas and collab and get all these just a lot of new, fun, creative things going on. Because we can pick up and go. Even though like painters and stuff, they can do that as well. But I don't think it compares to what we have as a glass artist.
It's a portable medium. To whereas like soft glass people, man, it's just, the amount of equipment that you need and the space and the energy resources, it doesn't make it that easy to just travel around and do it.
Yeah. We actually had for a couple of years in a row, we had an art show that was all glass based. We had the Chihuly came and did his tour across Florida. We had like 4 major shows of his going all at one time, and one of them was here in town. And the Maureen Art Center, who actually owns a collection now, they had a big thing to do about the glass, and they actually brought a lady in who had a trailer she towed behind her car or behind her truck or whatever that had it was a portable hot shop, and she had her glory hole and her her little pot and everything set up in their little space, and it was a rad little setup. She could just pull up, put a tent over it, and had chairs and shit, and people sat there and watched her do her thing. But again, it was a trailer behind a truck.
Hey, but whatever it takes to spread the knowledge about the medium, there's different things that have happened in the lampworking world as well. And, when you brought up Chihuly, my mind immediately went to, because I lived up in Seattle, and, I went to the boathouse, and, Chihuly was definitely, a big topic of conversation. And there were definitely a lot of different attitudes. There were some people that thought he was just magnificent, and there were also some haters. And, at the end of the day, Chihuly had raised awareness to that type of medium, and people got a pay raise out of it, whether they realized it or wanted to admit to it or not. And I think the same thing's going on in our industry now. We have pieces that are selling for ridiculous amounts of money. And, there's multiple camps on what they feel about that. But at the end of the day, it's bringing awareness, and it's, helping everybody justify the price that they need to put on their art to keep their lifestyle going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's weird, man, because like for the longest time in our generation of doing production, there was an industry standard in a sense for what things were worth in a sense. And
Sure.
now that now the industry's changed, it's like it's gone back to just complete fucking Wild West. Like charge whatever you want to charge, and if somebody pays for it, they pay for it, kind of thing.
Whatever the market will bear.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think eventually it'll level itself out again, but it's going to be a couple years till that happens. If it happens, there's still going to be the production side of value, but the one-off custom work. I mean, the fact that you got a piece going for $100,000 is amazing.
Yeah, and props to Sagan and Mothership for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. 5 years ago, you could ask me something about this industry, and I would have, felt like I could knowledgeably predict, perhaps, within a certain amount of accuracy, what might be going on. And I'd be the first one to tell you nowadays, I have no fucking clue.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. That was actually part of one of my last questions in my lightning round. I would ask was, what do you think the industry is going to be like in 5 years? And I had Coyle on him, and I asked Coyle, and he's like, I didn't know what it was going to be like 5 years ago, so I can't answer that. So I took that question out of my questions.
Yeah, no, I can't, and if I was to give you any kind of an answer, it'd be pure speculative bullshit.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Especially with the presidential race coming up and laws potentially changing or not changing, or I mean, who knows what the fuck's going to happen here in the next.
Man, I hope, and I'm not saying that I'm right, but I sure hope that we've already traveled far enough down that road to legalization and medical use that I kind of feel like there's not a whole lot of going back now.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because like in Florida, bro, we had like Tampa last week, as of last Friday, their ordinance just changed to decriminalize marijuana, where now you can get caught 5 times with it and you still won't get a jail sentence.
That's amazing.
Oh, dude, it's so, it's across. I mean, it's not in my county, but it's still the fact that it's right across the bay for me, and that is changing. And our governor just signed some acts into law for terminally ill patients that now have access to medical marijuana. And before it was just that Charlotte's Web stuff that had like really low THC content. Now they can have, it's basically an exploratory law where they can actually go out, and if something works for them and makes them feel better, go for it. So it's pretty.
It's a double-edged sword, though.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, I'm not saying that medical marijuana or decriminalized marijuana is a double-edged sword, but for us as pipe makers here in America, it is hugely a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because the more that goes on, then the more corporate entities that you have. Having all your states on the West Coast being recreational is opening up for, even though it's supposed to be federal, there are more imports coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's why I say it's a double-edged sword. It's, I wouldn't change a thing the way that it's going, but, because the American public is becoming more accepted of marijuana as a social lubricant and also a medicine, then they're also becoming more accepting of this pipe situations. And you got corporate entities that are coming into it, and they're seeing the money, and, they might not approach it with the same value system that we've approached it in the last 15 years or so.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and plus like the lack of education out there as the industry grows even broader. People see a pipe, they don't know who made it. A lot of us in the industry do, in a sense, have appreciation for it, but like those that are new into, I guess smoking or being around it, period, like my in-laws, for instance, when I first started dating my wife now, they weren't really against smoking or for it even. And then when I showed them my pipes, and they were both like, "Oh my God, these are pipes!" Like they couldn't believe it. It was cool to expose them to that. But if they went to a convenience store and saw some pipes on a shelf, they wouldn't have any idea if an American made it or some guy in China or in India made it. Kind of thing.
Again, we're coming right back around to education.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, part of which I'm going to part of my goal with doing the show is to get myself involved in the law side of things, talking with Luke Zimmerman and what have you, and really being a representation for our industry when the laws change, because right now as laws change, there's nobody representing the pipe industry. So the laws for the pipes aren't changing. They're still staying the same.
They haven't changed a bit. The federal government can come down and do another if they wanted to. Those federal laws are still the exact same federal laws that were here in 2002.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So I think as the states change, we have to have lobbying going on right next to the lobbyists that are there for the cannabis industry, representing us as well.
Sure. And that way I can actually call my carb a carb instead of having to refer to it as a cleaning portal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Or they're for tobacco. But it's again it's like talking with Luke, like things I didn't know about, which I'm glad I had him on. It's like the legal states, you have to be 21 to be able to buy a pipe and also use. But if you're in a state that's not medical, you have to buy a pipe that's for tobacco use only, and you only have to be 18 to buy it. So now when you're selling glass to people out there across the country, you got to ID them in the legal states. They have to be 21 to buy your pipe. I mean, legally, they have to be 21.
That's good knowledge. See, we need more of that.
Right. And I had no idea. And Luke's like, tell me this shit. I'm like, oh, my God. There's so much gray area right now, which is going to – we got to get it to the black and white. And it's going to take years and years and years and years to happen, but we got to start now to get it to go.
Well, we got a good start.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So I want to touch base on your American Helix. When that came out, it was a really new, innovative concept as a smoking apparatus. And I'm curious, what kind of caused the thought? Was there just like sitting around one night thinking about airflow, and that was an accident, and so that turned into something new? Like, how did that all come about?
Well, before glass blowing, I had spent some time working for an evaporative cooling company. And so I definitely got an education on, fluid dynamics and airflow properties working for that company. And I feel like that probably, I worked with Venturi technology and learned Bernoulli's principle. But when I actually came up with the pipe, I was at my desk answering emails for the flow. Like, wasn't doing anything glass related, and it just kind of popped into my head, and which I immediately went out to the shop and made one, and didn't even kiln it, just put it on top of the kiln and let it air dry. And saw that first tornado and felt the coolness of the smoke. And and actually what I realized as an afterthought that kind of led to that is that when I was at Bob made those really cool Dragon steamrollers. I don't know if you've seen one of them or not.
Oh, yeah. They've influenced my work for sure.
Yeah. So Bob had this way of carbing the Dragon steamroller to where it would bring in this cool air from the carb that would actually go around the Dragon and encapsulate the smoke and keep the smoke in a fluid stream. And what Bob's philosophy on it was that there was no such thing as expansion, that the smoke does not expand in your lungs. What happens is that when you get a hot hit of dense smoke into your lungs, that it triggers a reaction. Your brain sends a signal to your diaphragm, because your lungs literally think you're in a forest fire. And so it causes your diaphragm to contract. And that's what, people might confuse the feeling of the expansion with. And so with that cool air encapsulating the smoke, it fooled the lungs, and the lungs did not react, and they didn't send the signal to the diaphragm.
Interesting.
So what the Helix ended up being, and I can't claim that it was a lot of forethought to it, but once I got into it and kept tweaking the design, was that basically it was an everyday version of Bob's steamroller.
Huh. Fascinating.
So yeah, that's where that started. And it just, so we made a few and we took them to some shops and they sold the shit out of them. So we made some more, and, it kept going. It got to be more than I could do. And, we were talking about partnerships earlier. And, I would definitely say that the Helix is, where I definitely experienced a partnership that just did not work, Yeah. I know we had talked off air about that, which I won't bring up per se, but I do agree. It's definitely, I'm sure people out there in the industry understand. Sure. And then that's, to clear up any confusion, that's why you have, two different companies that are producing, Helix. You got Grav, which produces a Helix pipe, and then you've got my company, American Helix, which is the only one that actually domestically produces the helix.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's it, and it was cool. And again, I've got production in my blood. I've always enjoyed doing production. I wanted to learn more about lathe work. And, this gave me a reason to kind of keep pursuing that business of actually having a production shop and working with other people and learning new things. And, the lathe was definitely, I'd never worked on a lathe before 2008.
Huh. Interesting.
So, yeah. And now, we got 6 lathes in our shop, and, I've learned a lot about them. I'm definitely by no means a master. There's some people out there that do amazing stuff on a lathe. I'm not one of them, but, I can make my way around it without tearing my arm off.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
Yeah. I think it's a real good thing.
So I know when we last had spoken, you were saying a lot of your crew are veterans, which I think is awesome that you're doing that. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I was a veteran. I served in the Army for 3 years as a medic. My father served, my grandfather served. It's kind of a heritage in our family. And where our shop is located, we're very close to the largest Army base in the free world, which is Fort Hood in Texas. And, it's kind of an organic thing. I work very well with soldiers, being a soldier myself. And, there's a extent of discipline there that works really well in a production shop. And I also think that glass blowing and, marijuana as a medicine are all very good things for PTSD or soldiers that have actually seen combat. And, that's just my opinion. I'm not trying to speak for anyone else. So, it's just a direction that we've been moving. And so I'm really happy to say that we actually have 4 veterans besides myself that work in-house, and 2 of them are actually wounded warriors.
Man, that's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's something that we hope to continue to do as time goes on. And especially as, pipe making becomes, well, I don't want to really, I guess mainstream is the word,
Mm-hmm.
but the more mainstream that it gets is the more opportunity that I actually would have to work with Wounded Warrior program to try to get more veterans, open to this opportunity if they wanted to.
Yeah, man. It's interesting you say that, because there's been so many times where I've seen a homeless person, begging for money or whatever, and I've wanted to had that conversation with them, hey, would you ever be interested if you wanted to actually work and doing something like, melting some glass or doing production, just to help these people get on their feet and find something to do and as a living and a potential trade in a sense as well. But it's a weird situation approaching that type of person. I don't know. I'm apprehensive at times. But
I can't see necessarily bringing. That'd be a tough one.
Yeah.
But with soldiers, for me, it's a little more relatable.
Yeah, and I think too with the soldier, there's a lot more. There's the discipline, the foundational discipline that's there as well, which helps.
Especially if you're running a production shop.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So, and we all kind of have the same schedule. We all roll into work about 5:30 in the morning, start brewing the coffee, start talking a little shit, and so it works. It works for us. I definitely wouldn't say that it works for everybody in their shop environments, but for me and my background and where I'm geographically located, it's a good thing. We're going to continue doing it.
Yeah. So how long has the helix been around for?
I invented the first. Well, I made the first one in 2007 and started selling it probably November, December 2007, but it really didn't start kicking off until 2008.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So, probably about 7.5 years, probably.
Okay. So, Mike, I guess one question I do have about them, I don't know if you want to give it away or not, but how do you guys create the actual hole, the perforation in the body of the pipe?
Sure. I don't mind sharing it all. That's a tungsten.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to
clarify. Yeah. Tungsten rod. And I'm sure there's other ways, we've toyed with the idea of water jets and laser and everything. But, at the end of the day, we always go back to the tungsten, and that's a pretty tried and true tool for any glass blower's, toolbox.
Yeah, I agree. Because I know when I first saw those pieces, I was like, "Oh, these are fucking cool!" Like just the idea. I'm always wanting to take and see ideas and try them. I won't necessarily put them into my production line, but just want to try it, you know. So when I first saw that come out, and the line come out, I was like, "Oh, I wonder how the hell they're doing that." And so I did that myself. I did some angular piercing in my tubing walls to see if I can get that airflow to spin around. You know, it
Right.
worked. You know, it looked like shit, but it worked.
Well, hey, man, and anybody who listens to this, if y'all want to give it a shot, if you're interested in the Venturi technology of the helix and want to check it out and see if it actually does function like it's supposed to with the cooling of the smoke, give it a shot. I'm not going to be mad at you.
Yeah.
Hell, at least it's getting made in America.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the idea to learn how to pierce your glass is a big important step. You know, whether you're making bales on pendants or you got to fix a bowl hole or a push bub hole and your downstem closed up, you know, whatever. There's definitely using the tungsten is a major tool that needs to be used and learned.
Well, that's how I learned using it, was making bales back when we were doing a lot of jewelry. Everybody had their thing after Operation Pipe Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Some folks made dildos. A lot of us went and did the jewelry thing, and then of course there ended up being a community of jewelry makers that we all started working the Tucson show, going back to Lewis Wilson. Lewis Wilson has that best bead show, did have that best bead show down in Tucson, and so after Operation Pipe Dreams, and you could see a lot of people who are today some of the top level pipe makers in the industry, including Marcel Braun and Salt, and Andrew Brown, who is Carver B, Harold Cooney, Philip Vogelpool, Micro, Devin Somerville, Captain Crunk, we were all hanging down at in Tucson, Arizona once a year for the best bead show.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And so we had our own little micro community within the larger community that was sharing different, tips and tricks that were related to making marbles or making pendants, things of that nature.
Yeah, I've always been amazed by how large the bead community really is. And that the whole home studio movement was really spawned from the people that were wanting to be at home making beads in their house. It's pretty neat to see where it's evolved. But like you're saying, to have these micro communities, like Rashawn Jones was one of the first guys that he was the first guy on the show, and he's really big into all areas of glass, pipes included.
Rashawn was the one helping Lewis put on that show.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So still working with Kevin O'Grady today.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Big shout out to Big Rashawn. That's my brother from another mother right there.
Yeah. Same here, bro. He's good shit. He's actually gonna be on for episode 100 that we're having.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't wait. And it's kind of fun because it's going to fall on, it just happens that it's going to fall on the week of 420, so I'm actually going to post that show on 420.
So
good. Be a good day to have it on there. But
speaking of the beads, I can't, my information is pretty reliable. I looked it up, but I'm not going to say I'm 100% correct, but if it wasn't the first business, it was one of the first 3 businesses in the United States of America set up by the Pilgrims, was a bead making company.
Oh, interesting.
And they were literally made so that we would have something to trade with the Indians.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Huh.
So that's how far that goes back. And then you can even go farther back. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dudley Giberson.
No,
He's one of the old school cats. He was definitely one of the, 1960s studio glass movement. He was a student of Henry Halem's up in Wisconsin. And he was the one that worked with the Smithsonian and the Rakow, and he helped discover the Newsy furnace. And to hear him tell it, it actually came from a dream. So he dreamed about this furnace, he built the furnace, then he started working with archaeological teams with the Smithsonian to where they actually dug up. So he dreamed about this furnace supposedly before they dug it up in Newsy, and Newsy is a city that's about 45 miles north of Baghdad.
Wow.
So they found these furnaces, and to date, they are verified to be 2600 BC.
Wow, holy shit.
So, and we're talking about wrap and rake, we're talking colors, we're talking milli, we're talking, man, the techniques. And it was said by a Smithsonian researcher that the technological advancement of the beads that they found that were dated back almost 5,000 years ago, that there would have had to have been at least a previous 1,000 years for them to have attained that technology.
Amazing. I have to do some research
Yeah.
on that and look at that up, because I know like we have our museum of history we have here in town, and there's glass in there from like the Aztecs and the Incas, like little bottles, you know, for holding oils and what have you. And it's the same
Right.
thing, man. They've got wrap and rake patterns on them. Like I was looking at them, like, God, it looks like some of the first shit I ever made. I mean, literally,
Absolutely.
you know.
And you're looking at things that are, 12, 1,400 years old.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. Glass is old. Glass is old, and it's I'm sure that it's fascinated people since they got started with it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, especially when you get into where it's taking technology and just taking just society around the world in general. It's something that we all just take for granted because it's in everything that we use.
Oh, hey man, speaking of taking it for granted, I built one of those newsy furnaces. Dudley kind of helped me. He advised me on building one of those because we were doing a show at a gas conference, Dave Winship and I, to where we were trying to bring together different artists that were using, different various aged methods of lamp working. So like Carmen Lozar showed up, and she had this foot pedal, what do you call those? Like you use it in your fireplace, bellows, a bellows system.
Yep.
Yeah, so she had and then this is where the word lamp working came from, because she had this little candle that was fueled by alcohol in a wick, and then it had a separate hose coming up underneath it. So with the foot bellows, she was pumping air into that candle, and she was sitting over there lamp working. So we did all these various old school methods of lamp working, and one of them was this newsy furnace. And if you ever want to get a real appreciation for a GTT, go ahead and try to blow glass over some fucking charcoal briquettes, okay? You will really love that thing when you get back on that GTT or that Carlisle.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, it's like trying to put a beer bottle in a campfire and then see what you can do with it, or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's appreciation right there.
Amazing. Yeah, speaking of that, too, I don't know if I had mentioned it before, the Netflix has a documentary series. I think it's called like How We Got Here or How We Got to Where We Are or something like that. And there's a whole, I think it's episode 2 is on glass, and it goes back. The show basically is about like someone has an idea, which then snowballs into other innovations by other people from ideas and what have you. And it's all about glass and how glass started off as this one little thing that then turned into clear glass by the Italians, that then turned into glasses, then turned into microscope, telescope, and blah, blah, blah. It's a fascinating documentary.
Oh, yeah. We can, literally the majority of the medical and scientific advancements that we have today can all go back to Barovier, who was the guy who actually came up with what they called crystal.
Right.
And that was the first clear glass. Because we've had cloudy glass. We've had, glass, man. There were times where glass was more expensive than gold. You have this one city in Phoenicia that would make the cobalt glass, and these chunks of cobalt were literally more expensive than gold during that time period, which was the Roman time period, right around the probably turn of the beginning. How do you say it? From 0 till about 100, back in that time period.
Yeah.
So and these guys didn't blow glass. They built up these furnaces, they made the color, they broke it up. And then the Phoenician, they were the big merchants at the time. Mm-hmm. So you go from that to crystal, like when I used to think about it, I automatically thought that clear glass has to be the oldest glass. And it's not. It's actually probably the newest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's neat, man.
Yeah. So anyway,
it's go on. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, thank you, Barovier, man. We, as humans, appreciate your clear glass because it helped us out a lot.
Yeah, man, and it continues on a daily basis. Well, even talking to Mike Souza when I had him on the show, he was talking about they were able to use it for experiments by putting a mouse and in a bell jar basically with a plant, and they can actually watch the fact that this mouse was able to survive because the plant put off oxygen, and that was proof to them that plants put off oxygen and they absorb carbon dioxide. But they couldn't do that without having a glass container. If they had it inside of a box, the mouse would die or whatever, or they couldn't see what was going on. It just would live. But the fact they had glass, they could actually watch this process and this experimentation and the perspective, and it's so neat, and to where it's gone to where we are now with our phones and everything else.
Well, and oh yeah, from the time you wake up in the morning when you look at that alarm clock, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. And then going back to the Phoenicians, like it's amazing if people really understand how the Phoenicians were so inept, and even in the modern society, how they were a part of everything that was going on back then. Like you're saying, like they were like the main traders. They dealt with everybody from the Venetians to the freaking Genghis Khans, and they ruled the world because they were able to create language, alphabet, the whole 9 yards. I mean, there's so much that we have that we use that come from the Phoenicians.
Oh, they were crushing it. The color purple. You know why the color purple is kind of tied in with royalty is because there was a place off the coast of Phoenicia that there was this mollusk, a clam of some type, that produced this purple pigment, and at the time it was the absolute most expensive pigment in the world. And so obviously only royalty could afford it, and that's how purple got tied in with royalty.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, just useless knowledge that you learn when you're trying to find out about cool glass shit.
Right. And then we share on the podcast.
There you go. Well, thank God, man. I've been waiting. Yeah, I'm glad to have a forum to let that loose, because I've been holding on to it for probably about 12 years.
Fucking awesome. Now you can go on with your day and feel better about yourself.
Oh, I feel great.
Hell yeah, dude. So before we go any further and go down any more wormholes, let's take a minute to thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back and we will crash the kiln.
Sweet.
This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by the Flow magazine. Since its inception, the focus of the Flow has been to provide a bond among members of the lampworking community. In every issue, you can enjoy great content with the hottest artists and cutting-edge techniques using the latest industry products. These features, along with the continuation of our Women in Glass edition, Glasscraft Emerging Artist Awards, inspiring gallery showcases, dynamic general interest articles, as well as health and safety information, make the Flow the leading international lampworking journal. For more information or to subscribe to the Flow, go to theflowmagazine.com. That's theflowmagazine.com.
Sweet.
All right, we're back. So, as you know, the lightning round we have is now called Crashing the Kiln round, since I'm sure 99.99% of all of us lamp workers have, at one time or other, crashed our kiln to go sell an order to a shop that was still warm. So I thought it'd be fun to call this lightning round the Crashing the Kiln round. And it consists of 6 questions. So you can give me a 30 to 6 second answer, and if you want to expound upon the answers as well, you can, because it always happens.
No, I thought that was great. I heard.
You still there? Did I lose you?
Yeah, you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now.
Yep, nope, right here.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, man. So the first question I always like to ask, which is always the most difficult, is if there is any living glass artist that you have not yet worked with, who is it and why?
That I have not or would like to.
That you would like to and have not yet worked with.
Well, let me preface this that I read the questions beforehand, and I've listened to quite a few of the podcasts, so I got a little bit of a jump on this.
Sweet.
Joe Luigi. Joe Luigi is he was a teacher at Salem. He's an old school scientific glass blower. He knew how to work a lathe, but he did most of his scientific contraptions by hand, and probably one of the most skilled scientific glass blowers I've ever met.
Heck yeah. Had not heard that name before, but I would definitely do some research.
You got to check it out, man. I mean, and he's old school. Joe's got to be 90, but yeah, he is the original scientific glass pimp.
Awesome. Hell yeah. So, what are your top 5 favorite colors in glass?
Clear, 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 and clear.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for clear, man, we wouldn't be doing any of what we're doing today.
Amen. Absolutely. So, if you could describe the sound of glass cracking in one word, what is it?
Shit.
Perfect. What is your worst injury in the studio?
I I'm probably going to be going a little farther with this answer than I probably should. So I'm warning everybody.
Go for it.
Okay, so I used to make a lot of marbles. I still like making marbles. Love making marbles. And I was happened to be working on a rather large marble where I was jacking the tail end of the marble with my diamond shears. And so I popped this really pretty damn big molten blob of glass off. And I always look around to see where it is. I don't want to step on it. I want to try to land it on my table. And I remember this very time I looked around, I was like, man, I wonder where that thing is. Didn't see it. I didn't identify it. And then I sat down in my chair and I found out where it was. That was definitely the worst injury that I've had to date.
Oh my God.
But it worked out all right. I won't go into the details of it, but it was okay, man. I definitely have a nice big scar on my ass for it.
Holy shit. So that reminds me, and I wasn't sure if you were going to continue with this story, and I was hoping you weren't, but I had heard years and years ago, and this is completely off topic, but years and years ago, that somebody in our industry was making a large, now this could be folklore, these things get around, but somebody was making a large marble, and they backed up real quick from their bench, and they had a stool behind them, and the stool actually got knocked over, and when they stepped back, they actually stepped onto the bottom of the stool, and it went, and they were barefoot, I guess, and it hit a pressure point in their foot that caused them to pass out, and they fell, in their studio with this hot marble in their hand.
Wow, never heard that one.
Yeah, so I was, as you were telling me that story, I was like, man, I wonder if you're going to actually tell me that story.
No,
but
I wasn't the guy. But from being in the Army and standing in formation, I can tell you that there are several pressure points in your legs, especially when you lock up your knees, that will cause you to pass out. So I don't doubt that one.
Yeah, I was in ROTC in high school, and there was always one or two guys that would pass out in line in formation every time.
Locking them damn knees up.
Yep, like a dumbass. We always told them, don't lock your knees. And next thing you know, they hit the guy behind them or in front of them and then the ground.
Yep. That's the ticket.
Oh, shit. So when you're in the studio, do you watch TV, listen to the radio, or do you do both?
Podcasts. I can't watch TV, man. Can't do it. I got to be in the moment with the glass.
Yep, I hear you. TV for me helps me get through the production days, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah, podcast, but podcast definitely replace that. I listen to a lot of podcasts than I do anything else. I used to be a Pandora guy, but just podcasts, man. You're getting that audible, the ear thing, and you're getting some education, and you don't have to worry about hearing the same song twice.
Yeah, exactly. What are some of your favorite shows?
Well, yours, man. I definitely, I got turned on to Wise Guys about 2 months ago, and I've been listening to that. And awesome. I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan, big fan of Tim Ferriss, big fan of Aubrey Marcus. I listen to, what's his name? Duncan Trussell Family Hour.
Oh, I haven't heard that before.
He's been on Joe a lot, and then I listened to The Fighter and the Kid, which is Brendan Schwab, and I can't remember the other fellow's name, but they're really funny.
If you like history, man, the one called Hardcore History is
Dan Carlin.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I wish he'd keep doing it. Like those are done. So savor him. He's not putting any new ones out there.
Oh no shit, I didn't realize that.
Yep. I love that one, man. Yeah, that's a good one, especially the cons.
Yeah, and I'm still, it's fucked up. I'm on like episode 4, I think, of that con series, and they're not on their feed anymore. I have to go back. I think I have to either go to the website or go to their archives because they're not on the actual list of their shows anymore.
They're worth it. They're worth it. That was a great series.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's and that's what I like about podcasts, man. Is you get these behind the scenes insights to things that you are. That you enjoy, but you had no idea about, like I listened to a couple podcasts about Disney, and there's so many insights and back knowledge about shit that goes on at these parks that, being an employee there, I still had no idea, and I'm a big Disney nerd on top of it all. So it's neat to get these perspectives from people that are willing to share it. That's what I like about the show. I mean, I can ask questions, some may not get answered, but I like to get insights to things that people are maybe curious about, maybe not, but the shit that I want to know about.
Yeah, well, you can always ask.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's see. We got that. I got them all covered. So our last and final question for you is the fun one at the very end. So if you were stranded on an island, and it could be an island of whatever the hell you want it to be, and you had a glass studio on there that supplied a kiln, all your gases, and your torch, and you had to make something out of glass, what five items would you bring?
So you have no glass.
No glass, just your torch, your kilns, and the studio.
Well, listening to the podcast, I'm going to start off with glasses. Then I'd have to follow it up with some clear glass. And then at that point, for my last 3 items, I would have to pick a multi-machine, which is this cool lathe mill combination. And then I would have to bring metal and graphite, because I can find wood there, because I got to make some tools, man. You can't ask me to pick 2 or 3 tools, man. I got to have some tools, sir.
Yep.
So I would need that lathe mill combination, some metal and some graphite, so I can make my own shit.
Hell yeah. Good shit. Yeah, I've been waiting for the person just to not need glass because they have sand. But then,
Yeah, but man, then you got to do furnaces, and it's not just the sand. You got to have the right stabilizers, and that guy I was speaking about, Dudley Giberson earlier, the guy who came up with that Newsy furnace, or kind of went down that rabbit hole. He actually has made his own glass for his beads and still does, and he said it was definitely one of the most pain in the ass processes that he's ever done.
Yeah, I could imagine. And that's like the most common question I get all the time at Disney is what glass is made of, and the sand is what was always everybody's preconceived thought. And I always tell them, no, there's the sand. It was and it can be, but there's so many other factors that are involved in making glass.
Oh, it's got to be the right sand. You can't just get any old bullshit sand. And the potash stabilizer that you use, it's got to be right.
Yep.
I'm not saying I know a whole lot about it, but I've read about people who've done it, and them just talking about how particular you have to be with your ingredients.
Yeah, definitely a lot of alchemy involved.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, again, to wrap this up here, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your stories, and and also now that you guys are a sponsor of the show, I mean, it's humbling and it's amazing for me to have you guys, because when I initially designed the show, you and Mountain Glass were my 2 sponsors that I wanted to bring on the show to be a part of the show, and now that you guys are a part of it, it's like that one last piece of my puzzle I've been wanting to get together. So it's it makes me feel pretty good about this whole process, bro. So.
All in under a year, too. You're doing good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, man, kicking ass and taking names as fast as I possibly can.
And for all the people listening, I mean, I don't know what other ways that you allow people to support the show, but, as somebody has put out an educational resource for the lampworking community before, I really urge you to support this podcast and make sure that it keeps going, because you're going to get, no matter what you might donate or give to it or whatever it is, I promise you that it's going to pay you back tenfold.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm actually in part of the website. I have a link on there that's going to be up. I have a GoFundMe page for people that want to donate, at all. So.
Well, y'all do that. And if it's 50 cents or $5, it doesn't make a shit, man. Get on there and give a little.
Yeah, exactly. Hell yeah. Yeah, because really what I'm using the money for is to be able to travel is what I'm at with it, to be able to go do the shows and get involved and get more interviews and get insights and video and, all the stuff I've been wanting to do for the show. So it all helps.
Well, you and I talked about this off air, because I was wanting to do a podcast myself. I'd had a couple of people that were like, man, you should do a podcast, man. They're cool, and I think you'd be good at it. And so I started purchasing the equipment, and I started doing some research, and I started realizing, like, holy shit, dude, there's no way.
Yeah.
It's time intensive, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, man. It's it's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get, and as you trial and error. I mean, I think having my glass background and has really helped me in this podcasting space, because I'm all about perseverance and figuring shit out. And when I fuck up, I just fix it if I can, and if not, I'm transparent about it and say, hey, last episode the sound quality was not as good as it could have been, so I apologize. But it's definitely helped. But man, because like I said, we were, like you're saying, talking off air, I was spending 30 hours a week on this stuff. Now it's probably about 10, but still, it's 10 hours that I'm dedicating to the show.
When you're talking about a 40-hour work week, which I don't know many glassblowers that actually can keep it to a 40-hour work week, but still, that's a quarter of your week. That's a pretty huge slice.
Yeah, and my weeks, I mean, shit, dude, like my Monday, Tuesday at Disney is 30 hours, just those 2 days.
In 2 days.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, good for you, man. You're doing well, and I want to hear more of them.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah, me too.
And it was an honor to be on the show, man. I appreciate you thinking of us and wanting to get the backstory.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And I would love to bring the wife on if she's ever up for coming on and talking as well. I'd like to have you guys both on. I think it'd be a fun little dynamic conversation to bring you two on the show.
Cool. That'd be great.
Because my wife, I'm trying to get her on to do some couple shows to talk about, because she's an artist as well. And like I said, the whole dynamic of being artists and as couples and living in space and working together and stuff. I thought it'd be kind of fun for her and I together to do the shows with other couples. So we'll definitely be in touch about that and go from there. But in the meantime, I hope you guys have enjoyed this chat with Boxfan Will Menzies. It's Menzies, right? Is that how you say your last name, dude?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely,
okay.
Menzies.
I don't feel like a dumbass here. But so other than that, man, again, it was an honor and a privilege. And you guys stay tuned and definitely go check out Will. He is on Instagram. You can just look up everywhere, Boxfan Willie. Just put it in Google and you'll find thousands of information articles. You guys can go to the Flow online as well, and definitely subscribe to the magazine if you have not yet. They are, I feel, the best paper publication out there in our industry for sure. So.
And we're on IG, so you can follow us on IG at The Flow Magazine. Or no, pardon me, The Flow Mag.
Mag, yeah.
Yeah, The Flow Mag. And then mine is I'm a Box Fan.
There you go. And again, if you're using box fans for your ventilation, stop as of yesterday.
Stop. Don't do that. And also support American Glass, support American Glass tools. Keep it authentic if you can.
Amen. Other than that, y'all enjoy, and we will see you on the episode number, so you're going to be 96. God,
Nice.
Jesus, 96.
Nice.
Episodes.
Look at you.
Holy fuck, man.
Crushing.
So, y'all take it easy. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show. If you have any questions, comments, or remarks, please leave them in the show notes page area where it says comments. We'll see you soon. Have a wise night.